Tonight, we're really going to talk about networking and informational interviews and how that really looks in more of a remote setting. And really our goal tonight is to equip you with the skills and the confidence, because that's really important, to successfully conduct informational interviews, which is one of the most popular and kind of underrated forms of networking out there. So tonight we're going to go through what is an informational interview and what it's not. And we're then going to break down the real steps to conducting an informational interview, which is a form of networking. And this can be a very, anxiety producing process for some people. And, some people say, I have to be good at networking and I'm not good at networking, but we're really going to break down this process for you today. And then we're going to talk a little bit about rejection and then do a Q&A. In its plainest sense, an informational interview is a 20-minute conversation with a professional to learn about their journey and any advice that they may have for someone with your career goals. The way that you do this is in an informational interview, you're asking questions like, what is your day-to-day like? How did you get into this kind of a job? What's it like to work at your company? What advice do you have for somebody like me? So these are the kinds of questions that you would ask in an informational interview, because remember, and these types of conversations are ways for you to learn and to grow and to determine whether something about their journey or their job is something that's interesting to you. So a lot of people think that an informational interview is a networking tool where you actually ask for a job. And that's a big misnomer and miss sort of understanding that I want to clarify up front. You don't want to go into an informational interview and ask for a job or ask them if they have a job that they know of for you. It's really an opportunity to be curious and build a relationship with somebody, because you're out there looking for information. And through building relationships with people, you get to learn about them and build your understanding of something, and also create a network of people that you can go back to throughout your career for advice. And even though you don't, it's sort of commonly known that you don't ask for a job in an informational interview, there's a lot of data that suggests that people do get jobs from informational interviews. And I'll explain how that happens. But about 1 in every 12 informational interviews has resulted in a job offer. So this is not, you don't go in with the primary goal of getting a job, but oftentimes that's what happens. An informational interview is about learning and getting curious about something, about someone, about their journey. It's not about asking for a job, though that could come up in a conversation, and I'll explain how you can navigate that. It's a real opportunity to get data and information on what you do want, as well as what you don't want, right? Sometimes you might talk to somebody and they start talking about some industry or company and you're like, oh my gosh, I do not want that, right? Sometimes what you don't want is just as helpful as knowing what you do want. And they are this way to expand the number of people in your network that you can go back to in your career, right? And so when people talk about building their network, this is the primary way to do it. And it's also totally normal. I want to validate that it can feel scary to ask a stranger for help or advice and to reach out to them totally cold and out of the blue. But people that are available generally want to be helpful. I get informational interview requests all the time, and I enjoy responding to that and helping people, right? Even if I don't know them at all. So I want to go through the step-by-step process for how you would conduct an informational interview. And I'm going to include templates, and I'm going to include exactly how you can do this. It starts with a list. I want you to make a list of people that you want to learn from via an informational interview. And there's 2 types of people that you might reach out to. There are people that are working in a job or an industry or a company that you're interested in that you know in some way, right? Okay, maybe they're a friend of a friend. They are somebody that you know that's a data analyst at Facebook that you're like, I think I should talk to them because I'm kind of interested in data analysis, right? So it's somebody you're connected to. That's what we call a warm connection. But then there's people that are doing something you're interested in that you have no connection to. They're random people in the world. And those people are what we call a cold connection. So how can you start generating this list? Well, I want you to think about people that maybe hold a job title that you're like, oh, that's an interesting job title and I want to learn more about that. So these could be old coworkers, old managers, classmates, friends of friends. They can be LinkedIn connections, right? People you are friends with on LinkedIn, even Facebook connections, okay? Of somebody that, on Facebook is working at a particular company and you can see that they work there, put them on the list. You can also think about people that are friends of your LinkedIn connections. You should also think about companies that you're interested in. So if you are, located in Atlanta, and you know that Delta, for example, is headquartered in that general area, you might look at Delta's website and be like, who are the people that work at this company that maybe I'd want to talk to, right? That work at the headquarters in Atlanta. You can even go straight to LinkedIn or the company's website and just look around, right? There's probably companies that are on your radar, right? They're not necessarily the big companies. They could be small local companies too, but go directly to their careers page and look at who works at these companies. Now, something that I like to mention, a lot of people at this stage, they like to choose like the head of marketing at Airbnb or some very sort of advanced person in their career because they're maybe interested in marketing. That's a great person to want to talk to, but my recommendation is that you're more likely to get on the phone with somebody that's a couple of layers removed from that person. I want you to then choose a couple of people that you're going to research because those are the people that you're going to reach out to first, okay? So when I say research, what do I mean by that? I basically mean internet research. And so this is looking on, like literally taking their name and putting it into Google and seeing, can you look at their LinkedIn profile? Do they have a Medium account, which is a blog? Do they post on Twitter? Do they have a personal website, right? Like it's sort of just doing this intense research on somebody online. What jobs have they held? Okay, on LinkedIn, I can see that they hold, they're a marketing manager in the New York area. They've been there for 5 years, right? I can then see, okay, they've got a couple of certifications, they've got a couple of degrees. They actually wrote about a certification that they took on Medium. I read that blog post. And then you want to look at like, what kinds of other jobs have they held? So did they move industries? Did they move roles very quickly? Did they move across the country? Did they get a promotion, right? It's like you want to be able to build a picture of this person's career. You also really importantly want to see if there's anything in common that you have with this person. Do you have any mutual friends? Do you notice that you went to the same school? Are you from the same hometown, right? Is there anything at all that's similar? And the whole point of this is that you need to get an understanding of who this person is and what their career has been like, because you're going to use this information to send an email to them. So it's time to write them a note, right? That's thoughtful. And it could be an email, it could be a LinkedIn message, and I'm going to explain how you find their email address. So don't worry about that yet. But you're basically going to ask for their time to meet with you for an interview online. And you need this message to get their attention and also to be clear on what you want help with. Here's an example of one. Now, this is not a particularly good email, okay, for a request. And I want you all to read this, and I want you to tell me in the chat what's wrong with this email. Okay, a couple things that you already nailed, right? Feels desperate, feels really urgent. There is no effort to research this person and to customize this email. There's also no introduction to who Jamie is, who's sending this email, right? Like, why should I care who the heck is Jamie and why are they writing me, right? And really good point, Seth. I'm going to get to that, what you just said. There's misspellings in here, and these are Googleable questions, right? This is what Seth is saying in the chat. I could just Google what's the median salary for a data analyst. I don't need to ask this person that question. And it asks for a job. So this email screams, do all the work for me. And I would probably delete this and be like, wow, this is just a really bad email. So I want you to take a look at this email. And then I want you to tell me in the chat what makes this a better email. It's thoughtful. It's got a descriptive subject line. It's a clear description of how Jamie found Tim, right? It's clear, oh, this is what I read about you. It introduces Jamie, why they're reaching out, and it's clearly asking for 20 minutes, which is a very approachable amount of time. And there is not a mention of a job up front, right? So this is an intentional email. It reflects research, it reflects curiosity, and it's really about a desire to learn, not a desire to beg for a job. And now it's time for you to prepare for this interview because it's coming up in 2 weeks or it's coming up tomorrow, right? So how do we do that? Well, let me tell you a little bit about how these 20 minutes of an informational interview generally go. They start with the first 5 minutes of just saying, thanks for joining. It's great to chat with you. This is what I want to talk about today. And then it launches into about 10 minutes of questions. And guess what? You are asking these questions. You are the owner of this meeting. So you have to take control of it. And you're going to ask about 10 minutes of questions. And then you're going to do a little 5 minutes of like recapping and closing. And you have one final question you're going to ask, which I'll explain what that is. And then you thank them and sign off. So literally, this is what you can say. Hi, so-and-so, thanks so much for taking time out of your busy day to chat with me. I'm hoping to make a career change from finance into data analysis. And I have been learning from people that may have advice on this kind of transition. As a bit of context on me, I recently completed a certificate program called blank. And for the last 5 years, I've been working in the blank field, and I'm hoping to become a data analyst after this program. I've done research on analytics and I looked into your background on LinkedIn, and I'm really excited to hear about your journey from point A to point B, which you'll know when you look at their LinkedIn. I know I can learn a lot from you, so I came prepared with some questions. Do you mind if I jump right in? The next sort of 10 minutes are you asking them questions. It's called an informational interview because you are interviewing them. So here are some questions you can ask. I'd like to hear the story of how you went from this role to this role. Is there a typical day in the life for you? Like, what does that look like? Can you tell me about a challenge you've been facing this week at work and how you're trying to solve it? What's an exciting project you're working on? What is the culture like at your company? How did you, get this promotion that I saw you got? Or how did you jump roles or careers, right? It's just interviewing them and asking them about their professional life, because again, you're trying to learn from them. And then you want to also ask questions that get their advice, because remember, you are asking them for directions, right? You are asking them to show you what the landscape looks like, and you're an outsider, right? You're trying to learn. So I like these questions. Is there something you wish you'd known or a skill that you wish you had starting out in this industry? What is the best advice you have for someone interested in this field? Are there any books or articles or podcasts or education programs that I should look into, right? It's like, how would you ask somebody for advice, right? Those are the kinds of questions you want to generate. And then I want you to ask the very final question. If you were me, who would you talk to next? So this is a great question because it forces them to start putting themselves in your shoes and ultimately make you a referral to the next person, right? This is how you're going to get your next informational interview, because they're going to recommend somebody to you and then they'll connect you, and it'll be a great way for you to meet the next person. But the final step is that you need to follow up with them. Now, I would say that this is one of the things that really distinguishes people. I probably do, like 2 informational interviews a month, and I would say only 50% of people follow up. And that actually makes a big difference to me, because I think about that and I know who has followed up with me. Remember that the absolute worst thing that can happen to you if you do this is that the person will not respond to you. They will not respond to you and say, how dare you ask me questions? How dare you reach out to me? There is literally no downside to this. The only downside is if you make a bad email and you send them a bad email, but you're not going to do that because you know how to now, right? So the absolute worst thing that can do is that they don't respond to you, and that's it. So it's absolutely worth doing this.